Everybody, welcome back to Dynamite Download Week 4. Normally you would be seeing all three of us, but this week our good friend Zepp is out celebrating his birthday in the desert. So this week you're stuck with SPD and Crayfish. We're going to hold it down for our buddy. And I know that even he out in the desert on his birthday, Zepp had to be plugged in. A little shout out to our man right there. He's not alone. People across the country were dialed in to Dynamite Download. There was no missing AEW Dynamite this week. The anticipation on social media was through the roof. The engagement with fellow fans and wrestlers alike, you could tell the roster on AEW itself retweeting things, asking for fan involvement. SPD, I'm not alone in seeing that this card was stacked, and for good reason. As you can see here, guys, the Dynamite results this week, every single title was on the line, and shockingly, I think most people were predicting that there was going to be a title change. Shockingly, no titles changed hands this week. So a lot to talk about. Starting off first, the show started off with, there weren't even any introductions, guys. We were our tag team champions and the best friends were in the ring starting off the show. SPD, what do you think about that tag match?
So I want to touch on that too. You know, I love the build and entrances. So I was a little shocked of the in-ring start of the show. I know obviously this card was absolutely stacked to the max. And so I get it to kind of cut timing just a little bit. But I do like the entrances, and that kind of just gets you pumped up when you just get in and get that ring announcement to going. It kind of, I don't know if it makes the match not less or as exciting to me a little bit. I don't know. When you get the entrances, you get that anticipation and that suspense to me. And when you don't have that, I'm not a big fan of the way that starts the show. I think you should start the show, especially with a live audience, with an awesome entrance, someone who can really get the crowd going. And this match was a good match, but I think they could have started the card with a better match to really get the card going. You know, I personally think the Cody OC match should have been the start of it. We'll get into that later. But overall, I know we were talking a little bit back and forth about this, but I liked the Best Friends' new ring gear, and I definitely think they are an act that is more over with fans. And, you know, when I hear them get crowd reactions, and I like that best friends chant, and I would love to be chanting that in the crowd, I think they are more of a draw. But when they're, you know, it's not the crowd, they don't do too much for me. You know, Trent is great in the ring. I think he's an awesome performer. And believe it or not, Chucky T surprised me a little bit. He's starting to grow on me a little bit, piece by piece. You know, after that street fight match, and after that where he took that crazy chair bump, and a few spots here in this match, he was growing on me a little bit. So best friends in front of a crowd, I can definitely see them, you know, getting over very well, and for them to have 17 tag wins in 2020 is very impressive. So they've been, you know, the backbone of this company almost in the tag division that is very heavily stacked. And so I did enjoy the match. What about you?
Well, you hit on a lot of stuff there. First things first, I hear you. I think that the Best Friends being a backbone of the tag division and being incredibly over, just listening to the fans, being engaged in social media, I was surprised at how vocal the fan base was for trying to get behind the Best Friends and OC. There was a big push for all three of those guys to come away from with gold on social media from what I saw. And that means the FTR is obviously doing their job as heels. There's not a lot of people who are rooting for them to win, right? But that's one thing. I will say that I wasn't surprised by the actual finish of the match as far as the FTR holding and retaining the titles. I anticipated that. The actual finish of the match is going to get a lot of talk online. The referee kind of dodging or ducking. I don't know what that was all about. Unfortunately, kind of sloppy execution to the finish to a match that I thought was one of the better matches on the overall card. It was
I agree.
kind of disappointing the way that match ended. But that said, the ending of the match itself bled into, I think a talking point that is going to be feeding next week's show. Miro and Kip Sabian going to be fighting against the Best Friends. Whether it's next week or in the coming weeks, it certainly was. There was no denying that the Best Friends are going to want some revenge after that beatdown. But before we get into that too much more, SPD, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was obviously you mentioned Chuck Taylor growing on you a little bit. I felt like this match really did a nice job of playing to the strengths of the Best Friends. Trent being the one who was isolated, being in the ring quite a bit. Trent is the workhorse of that team. There's no denying that guy is one of the better overall workers in AEW. Not a lot of flaws in that guy's game. And they did a nice job of kind of hiding Chuck Taylor's deficiencies. I personally was geeked about this match for that reason. I thought Chuck Taylor would blend really well with FTR. A little bit slower pace. Chuck, not to dog on the guy, but you could tell his cardio is not quite to the same level as his partner.
Right.
And so I thought maybe a little slower pace, a little bit more brawling, a little bit more hard hitting would fit Chuck Taylor's style. In my notes, I kind of just said it might have been wishful thinking on my part. He just is still not. He's not doing it for me, man. And it's a shame that I have to say that, considering they are one of the more over acts on the card. I think that the discrepancy between Trent and Chuck Taylor is becoming more and more glaring the more they're on television, unfortunately.
Right.
But that said, Chuck Taylor did lead to that next feud, right? Him steering the video game console that Kip Sabian was playing on. Was that that was something. And I have to say, as an FTR fanboy, you guys got to give some credit to the champs for, instead of taking a cheap count-out victory, he did drag Taylor's carcass to the ring, did not take the count-out, wanted to finish the match in style. So I was impressed by that. But obviously the match itself is over with. We know that the Best Friends aren't going to be fighting for a tag title shot. Maybe, obviously with knowing that the ending was a little crooked, they have a stake in trying to get another title. It doesn't really hurt them too much, this loss. Right. But they're going to be most focused on getting revenge against Miro and Kip Sabian. This was by far the most intense we've seen out of Miro. I know that you and I have talked a lot about really, unfortunately, he came in as such a hot free agent, and the buzz around Miro has really fallen off quite a bit. What's your take on this? Before we get into the elite or delete of the match itself, FTR versus Best Friends, I think that the buzz on social media from being plugged into the fans is going to be Miro and Kip Sabian. What are your thoughts on that? And then we'll summarize the match real quick.
Yeah, the end of that FTR match to me was very slow and sloppy. There was a lot of down quietness, and I was just kind of confused. I'm like, what is going on? Do they know where they're going with this? And the whole arcade thing I thought was pretty cool to kind of just further the storyline, because that was some of my disappointments, I guess, in previous episodes where there was, semi builds and then it just kind of ended, which there's a big one at the end of this discussion we'll have later tonight. But Miro, I tweeted about it on at AEW Dynamite DL, that this is what I want to see out of him. Even though if heel babyface, the fans are going to chant for him, which is historically the way it's kind of been with him.
Right.
But this is the way he should have debuted, coming out angry as hell, whooping everyone's ass, just doing anything possible, just squashing guys and just looking like a force to be reckoned with. And he definitely did that today. It was kind of like a assurance of how much of a badass he is. And because he was kind of fizzling off, it was like this awesome debut, great promo, and then the one match, and then it just was like, okay, where do you go from there? He's playing video games in the crowd. And so whatever, I get it, there's a place for that, and which came into play today. But and then the whole game over thing, so that's my take on the Miro thing. I loved it. I loved the way he acted, and I loved how he stood tall and strong.
So do you think, overall, do you think that the Miro segment and the way that the post-match shenanigans, do you think that salvaged your opinion of the match? Because I know, based off of what I hear from you, the way that the show started, no introductions, sloppy ending of the match itself, as far as the ref confusion. To me, and even as a FTR fanboy, this match was a delete for me. What about you?
I will agree with you that we have a delete on it. It's going to having this, the anniversary show with a absolute pay-per-view stacked style card. The expectations were high, and I was expecting a lot. There was some good points of the match, but that whole sloppy ending, and even though the Miro standing strong almost can kind of make you forget that, it didn't. And so, we're both giving it to the delete. I think it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Yeah. And for me, I think that AEW did a nice job of, quickly segueing into that attack after the match, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was just an overall kind of a little bit of a miss. Kip Sabian's promo had me cringing a little bit too. So this whole segment, to me, unfortunately, even with the Miro beatdown, for him to bring out this aggression over a video game, I don't know where they're going with his character, and I'm slowly but surely losing interest in one of my favorite guys in wrestling. So that said, let's move forward to the next segment that really took place, that was teasing throughout the show. This whole show was really focused on Lance Archer and Jon Moxley, that main event. We got a sneak peek of Murder Hawk Monster taking just beating down Moxley backstage. So the trend of beatdowns was happening throughout the show. I thought that they did a really good job of building anticipation to Moxley versus Murder Hawk on social media and on tonight's show. Regardless of how you feel about the end of the show, I thought that they did a really, really great job of making sure that the fan base was dialed in and really excited about seeing this match. Next step, really, transitioning from there, the next big aspect of the show was that they announced the final contenders of the 8-man AEW tournament bracket. What are your thoughts on the additions? And really, they finally did show us the actual breakdown of how the card's going to go, how the tournament bracketology is going to go. But why don't we show that breakdown for the fans here? SPD, way to go. Thanks for pulling that up. Out of the first round matchups, what do you think? Obviously, for me, I'm dialed into one particular matchup. What about you?
Oh, I mean, I'm sure we can agree with it. I mean, the Lucha Bros, by far, that's going to be a show-stealing match, in my opinion. Two guys that, in my opinion, are the best tag team on the planet, the way they can perform. But the rest of the first round, obviously, you would think from some pretty easy victories with Kenny, Wardlow, and Hangman, and it does seem like we talked about last week, all signs pointing towards Hangman versus Kenny, unless they start to push Wardlow, which I think they still maybe are a little afraid to do or just not ready to do for some reason, which he deserves, but that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, definitely the Penta L0M and Rey Fenix is going to be a show-stealing match, in my opinion, I hope. But this tournament is going to be very exciting. I'm finally excited to see Kenny Omega back in singles action and Wardlow as well.
I think that you did a great job. I mean, obviously, you nailed it. I think that the Penta versus Phoenix matchup, for anybody who's watched their work before, obviously, even before AEW, you're gonna be treated to something special. Those two guys, their in-ring styles obviously complement each other really, really well as a tag team, but they mesh really well when they go head-to-head. Phoenix is unmatched as far as a high flyer goes. And while Pentagon can pull off some high-flying moves himself, clearly, I mean, to me, as far as a brutal technician, there are a few people in wrestling who do what he does. All of his submissions and his offense is targeted towards body parts, and he does an excellent job of really striking his opponents in a way that's going to be a brutal matchup, especially between two members of Kingston's crew. I think that's going to be an awesome matchup. The one thing you mentioned in that, though, before we move on, you mentioned that they all seem like easy victories. I think it's going to be difficult to project the winner of Penta versus Phoenix. Mm-hmm. But the other matchup that I think that you got to be careful for is I do think that Wardlow versus Jungle Boy could go either way.
Wow.
I do. I think that obviously Wardlow is the favorite. The guy's a beast, and I think all of us here on Dynamite Download are huge fans of him.
Yeah.
But Jungle Boy is I think that he's an underrated singles performer. I know that he's a part of the Lucha Express. But I think that, Lucha Express, the Jungle Express. But I think that honestly, when we gotten to see him in singles competition against Cody, I've been impressed by him. I think that he can carry his own weight. I think that matchup's going to go really, really. That's going to be an interesting one. So out of the first round matchups, that's my second most intrigue for me, and I think it could be more of a toss up than you think. That said. Wardlow is the favorite, and we got to see plenty of Wardlow in the next segment where we got to see MJF and Jericho. Those two guys, we've talked about it at length on Dynamite Download. Anytime you put them in a segment together, it seems to always go well. They both, even when there's things that don't necessarily go their way, they have a way of improvising and making things work. MJF promised a huge announcement tonight, and he kind of, sort of, maybe kind of did offer up something that for the first time that we've been hinting at quite a bit. What was your takeaway from MJF's request to potentially join the Inner Circle?
Yeah, this segment was pretty interesting. Obviously unexpected, but needed. You know, even if they come out and do promos, Jericho and MJF are worthy of showing up on every week's card. It was a little off all over the place, a little scattered, in my opinion. It could have been a little bit smoother, but MJF can just keep rambling, and it can still be smooth. No stuttering. He never misses a beat. Same with Jericho. Those guys, as we've talked about at length, are A+ on the mic. And for MJF as well, beyond his time. But the announcement and wanting to be in there, it's just these seeds that are growing and growing and growing. I don't know what to take, honestly, because it's just, I could never see MJF joining the Inner Circle. And obviously the Inner Circle doesn't need another member. It'd be overcrowded. For two heels to go at it, is this where Jericho starts to naturally become back a babyface? I don't know. And then what I did love about the segment, though, is Wardlow and Hager, the stare down at the end.
Yeah, I knew you'd catch that.
Yeah, that is something we wanted for a while. And I think that would be a great matchup, great feud going on. And, those two guys need to be fighting.
They both have, one of the things, too, is, Wardlow was a collegiate wrestler. Yeah. And Hager was a phenomenal collegiate wrestler himself. So, not only are they two big, strong, powerful guys, but they can both wrestle. They both have great amateur backgrounds. So, I think it would be good for both of them to go head to head. I'm with you. I don't necessarily think that the dinner next week. Now, this was pure gold. A steak dinner next week. I don't necessarily think that this is going to lead to MJF actually joining the Inner Circle. But what we're seeing is, even with the Sammy stuff that we've talked about, MJF is potentially outsmarting Jericho here. Is he starting to plant seeds of division within the inner circle. I'm intrigued where it's going, and obviously it's making great television. MJF, I gotta say, he stole the segment. He did a great job of kind of antagonizing Sammy. I thought even when Jericho kind of insisted how much he hated Animal Planet, it was a little weird, a little awkward. Normally Jericho's lines always hit hard, but that one was kind of awkward, and MJF even picked up on it, and he just ran with it. And that's why those two need to be on, engaged with each other and on television more, because they have a way of naturally playing off of whoever they're involved with. And it usually results to entertaining television. So I think we're all excited about next week's steak dinner between MJF and the Champion.
I don't know where you go from that. That is just, I honestly think, not to cut you off, is that Jericho and MJF, especially Jericho in his career, he probably is sitting at home drinking a little bit of the bubbly, wearing his Inner Circle shirt in the hot tub maybe, and just like, what can I do that's the most outrageous thing that will get over no matter what? And, everything from, I mean, look at all his nicknames: the Demo God, the Million Dollar Man, Le Champion. But I'm going to make a bold prediction here. And this might be a slow burn and slow build, but I think within the next maybe 6 months or less, MJF takes over the Inner Circle, and we see Jericho turn babyface.
Wow.
Could you see that happening?
That's a bold prediction. I see it more happening where, like, Sammy is starting. You can tell Sammy's starting to get a little frustrated.
Right.
Ortiz kind of spoke up and said how they didn't need MJF, and I think that I think what's going to end up happening is MJF's going to end up turning the Inner Circle against Jericho. I think that could. I think that you could be onto something there, bud. I think that there's some definite potential there. Could the Inner Circle turn against Jericho? Now, that would be something. That would make some entertaining television.
I agree.
I like that. Speaking of entertaining television, to me, Britt Baker, I know that we're all fans of Jericho and MJF, but I gotta say, Britt Baker deserves to be in that conversation when it comes to the most natural, entertaining characters in AEW. Every time she's on screen, she becomes more comfortable with her character. She always finds a way to bring humor and levity to the show, and there's always a desire to want to see more. I'm becoming more and more a Britt Baker mark, man. I think that they need to start to really build their show around her. I think that the division around her.
You give her an elite?
I give Britt Baker a big elite. I'm a big fan of Britt Baker, and I think that as time goes on, especially as we start to see the division start to sort itself out, Britt Baker is the person who needs that title belt. I know that she's over without it, and so maybe there's a thought that why mess with something? Allow the title to make somebody else. But that Britt Baker with the title belt, I'm all for it. I'm all for it too.
I think it needs, as good as the past women and current women champions, putting the strap on her just makes that more of an important belt, because the women's title belt has clearly been buried for months. It's not featured. It's not talked about, in my opinion. It's not really
even tonight's show. Tonight's show, it was added kind of late as a kind of a throw in, right? I understand what you're saying.
I agree. I think Britt Baker, you could call her the MJF of AEW on the mic. I mean, those are two green wrestlers that have really are performing beyond their time. And so you have these two original. I haven't heard of MJF or Britt Baker before AEW. So these are two green, excellent superstars that could really carry the company. And
I think what's so important about Britt Baker too, and it's key to note that Sheeta, although excellent in the ring, she's a great striker. She's been able to have good matches with Thunder Rosa, Nyla Rose, Big Swole tonight. Like, she's shown an ability to have good matches with opponents, big, small, whatever, right? Blending of styles.
Yeah.
I have to say, if for those of us who want the women's division to grow and to get more exposure and more TV time, they have to put that title on somebody who's more of a bankable star.
Right.
And although Shida is a great wrestler, she simply does not have the comfort level on screen. It's very obvious when she does do the limited promos that she's been given time for.
Right.
She just does not have the character that Britt Baker has. And I think that the only way that division is going to grow is if they put that belt and they feature Britt Baker.
I agree.
Sound the alarm. Crayfish is calling for it. Come on, baby. Put the strap on Britt Baker and let's go. Take it to the moon. Let's go.
I agree. I mean, as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the women's division in AEW. And I think doing something like that would start to convert me. And I agree. You put this awesome mic working star, she's going to really get under your skin, but it's just going to make you remember her holding that belt. It's going to be great. It's going to be Chris Jericho, MJF all over again, and just putting people down. But yeah, I agree.
I hear you. We'll move to the next big match of the night. And, there were a lot of promos tonight, so really you're not going to get a lot of elite or deletes out of this episode. There were a lot of promos. There were only 4 key matches. The next match featured Orange Cassidy going up against Cody. My big takeaway that I want to emphasize before we get into actually diving into this was by far the best actual wrestling match performance by Orange Cassidy. And I guess I'm not surprised. For me, I'm not surprised given Cody has a natural ability of, showcasing his opponents. He always does a really great job of building a story in his matches, breathing life. He's really great with pacing and as far as actually allowing things to slow play throughout the match. And I think that Cassidy did a really nice job tonight of, obviously, yes, he did some of his spots with the fake, the OC kicks and stuff like that.
You have to.
It was nice to see a little bit of the actual intensity brought out, and I think that going head to head with somebody like Cody really gave Orange Cassidy a different spark. That was one of the things I was most impressed by. What do you say, SPD?
Man, this match was. I have a lot to say about this match because I have a lot of questions too. First off, why is Cody back to blonde? Like you re-debut, and then why is he back to blonde?
He teased it on social media. He did say blondes have more fun. He did say it, but where did it come from?
You're dark. You got this new persona. You got the red Nightmare Family logo, and then you come out with black hair and start whooping the Dark Order up, and then now you're back blonde. But then also, what I didn't understand is, why is the crowd, even if it's the real crowd or the ambient noise that they're pumping in, why are they booing Cody? He comes back to beat Brody Lee, who's clearly one of the top heels, and Cody's this baby face taking the title back, and everyone is so over for him. And then all of a sudden, they're booing him versus Orange Cassidy. I don't understand where they go from that.
Orange Cassidy is incredibly over,
right.
But I can't disagree, and I think that was one of the things you pointed out in last week's show is they almost painted themselves in a corner here. Obviously, Orange Cassidy needed a good showing given he was beaten down by Brody in his last match, and this was his first real title. He got another title opportunity, so he needed to have a good showing. But I know what you mean. Cody is the backbone, and is this? Yeah. He didn't really play heel at all during the match. No. It's not as if he did anything in particular that would make you feel like he deserved any sort of booing whatsoever from the fans. It was definitely odd.
Right. I don't understand why Brody Lee was not present, and how they're like, oh, the Dark Order's in the crowd, and then Brody Lee's not here. They just quickly brushed over it. I think him not being present was kind of hurting him. some other take about the Dark Order though. John, not to like go on a tangent, John Silver, I know Zepp, our other Dynamite download member, is very high on him. He had an awesome show, man. He not only was he hilarious in this match, the little bit he was there, his reactions and his just overreactions, and then when they got picked for the tag team match next week, his reaction on that too. I don't know, John Silver, I'm starting to become a huge fan of him. But back to the Cody Orange Cassidy match. Overall, yes, I agree with you. The wrestling was fantastic. That apron beach break by OC near the end was whew, wow, unbelievable. And once again, was never a fan of this. The time limit thing. I guess you're protecting both guys, from having Orange Cassidy getting back-to-back title losses,
Right.
and them just saying there's a rematch in 2 weeks. Kind of like, I don't know. It's a weird. I don't know where they're going with it. It's a weird booking, in my opinion. And I noticed that the women's title match, not to jump ahead, had a 60-minute time limit, but this TNT has a 20-minute time limit. So what's going on here? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of inconsistencies there. Even the tag title match with Best Friends, right? Like all the Brush with Greatness challenges is about like the 20 minutes with FTR, and then that match was a 60-minute time limit.
Right.
There are some inconsistencies, and I think that time limits have been a controversial thing with AEW to this point. I think that a little bit more consistency would be beneficial for the show. It would allow fans to get a little better
Right.
feel for what to expect. I think that all championship matches should have a default time limit that we can
Right.
all agree to and move forward with as a foundation. I don't think that it should be jerked back and forth when it's convenient. And when we have something like this where it's a 20-minute time limit and then it runs out, it
Yeah.
sort of almost feels like it was kind of shoehorned in there.
Right.
So it was an opportunity for them to get out of like you said, being booked into a corner. Do you have OC lose clean again to the champion, or do you have Cody win and then lose 1 week after winning? It was really
Right.
a no-win situation that you pointed out last week, and I think that it ended up unfortunately rearing its ugly head. To me, I thought that going into the match, I thought the Dark Order was going to get involved. I thought that it was going to end in a DQ, and in that way, it would have saved both parties. It would have made them both look good. But they did get involved and got thrown out. So,
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately, like that is something that leaves us with more questions than answers, and maybe not in a good way.
Yeah, I know. I
What were
hear.
your thoughts on overall, Sean? Before we give our I'm gonna toss it to you.
Yeah.
Elite or delete, and why? I'll let you kind of elaborate a little bit on it.
So for that Dark Order whole thing, I was very confused. I think I kind of have like a side conspiracy theory on this, that something maybe happened to Brody where he couldn't get to the show. That could be something, because if they're gonna just postpone this Orange Cassidy Cody match for 2 weeks, have a rematch, then I could totally see um, I could totally see that Brody Lee coming back again, and doing something like that. So I don't know. It's, to me overall, it is definitely an elite match for the wrestling and the story and all that. And then having Darby Allin be in the crowd, you'll see him, just kind of sitting there hinting at it. And then the announcement that he's going to be getting the TNT title championship match at Full Gear, which to me still, we all, I feel like we agree that Darby is a future champion in some aspect or another. But I don't think he's still ready to hold the strap, especially with his long history of being injured and concussions and this reckless style he has. But the match itself is an elite for me by far. Overall wrestling is really great. And I'm not a fan of the time limit. And what I really like when they do in Cody matches is that big pan across when he's on the top turnbuckle, where it's like this wide angle pan. So I'm all about like the camera angles, and AEW has got some really cool camera angles. They've been starting to incorporate, the overhead angle and then the long, fast pan where he's up there on the top of the turnbuckle. I think that's a really great aesthetic look.
That's a good point by you, and one that I haven't picked up on. I think I'm going to surprise you, and I'm going to say this is a delete. I was disappointed. I think that although it was a great match, and again, Orange Cassidy put on a great showing, I think one of the things that I'm starting to see, and I think AEW needs to be careful of, is that every single Cody match is becoming this, other than when he was surprisingly defeated very quickly by Brody Lee.
Yeah.
Every single Cody match seems like it has to be like this epic match. That, it's got to be this back and forth, and it's got to be drawn, this push Cody to the limit type of match.
Yeah.
And again, this one went 20 minutes. I feel like you got to be careful that they're starting to kind of fall into this formulaic blueprint of a Cody match. And the same thing's starting to happen with Jericho, and that's starting to really concern me, where, Jericho is getting tested and being pushed to the limit by guys who are beneath him. I don't know. I was disappointed in the overall feel of this match. I don't know. To me, again, the two styles definitely blended well together as far as Orange Cassidy being able to showcase his abilities in the ring. But as an overall segment, it fell flat. The time limit was kind of it didn't do anything for me. I think it was the false finish at the end. The false finish at the end didn't really didn't do anything for me. And again, I think that Cody needs to have a little as his first title defense. I understand putting Orange Cassidy over a little bit, but I wasn't into it. Maybe it's because I'm not as big of an OC guy as some, but I know I'm starting to sound a little bitter and jaded. Maybe I sound a little like Jim Cornette, and maybe Nate would be cutting a promo on me right now. Because honestly, yes, the match itself, it's hard to nitpick. But I was expecting a lot out of this show, and I guess maybe that's on me as a fan. But I don't know. Let's get into it. Like I said, I know I'm starting to maybe be a little bitter here. Why don't we step back?
We can. I need to sleep on it, and I know you need to sleep on it. We'll reiterate it. You'll give our thoughts on Twitter, and in your write up in the Crayfish Corner on the DynamiteDownload.com. You can read all about it. So it is interesting where they go from here. And so, but in the meantime,
my favorite part, and this will also segue into Nate's promo because Nate is our resident Darby Allin fanboy. My favorite part about the whole match, honestly, was the cuts to Darby in the crowd. To me, Darby and Cody have a lot of history together. Darby and Cody, for the ultimate underdog of Darby Allin, Cody has been the guy he's always wanted to try to get over that hump, and he hasn't been able to. And I think that if Darby ultimately is the guy who beats Cody, again, I think that there's a lot there that I'm interested in. So that in and of itself, I know
I can't see Darby doing that, and that just is a shame. I think they should have ended the match if they did a time limit choice like that. It should have been with a Darby distraction on the ramp. Like, oh, there's 1 minute remaining. Then Darby, like the lights go down. Darby shows up, and then he's like standing there, and they're both just like staring at him. And then the time limit goes out, and so that way it's like an even bigger match build.
Darby, I will say, like you and I both have called for a little bit more it's weird that to call for more distraction finishes or more DQs. AEW doesn't do that a lot. AEW does not fall into the DQ distraction roll-up finishes. They don't do that a lot, and I appreciate that. But when you compare that to a time limit draw, maybe there's maybe it adds a little bit more to the story. I don't know. Go ahead. Let's transition into where our buddy Zepp. I know that he had a lot to say about one of the more vocal critics about AEW. Again, I got to be careful here because I don't want to get on his radar.
I know. So I haven't seen this. He sent this video to us on his way to celebrate his birthday. So this will be the first time that I am seeing it. So this is what he had to say.
Yo guys, sorry I'm missing the Dynamite tonight, the anniversary show. I apologize. It is my birthday, so I'm going to Joshua Tree, and I'm not going to be able to watch Dynamite live. So I won't be part of the Dynamite Download podcast, and that's a bummer, but I'm sure you guys will do a great job. I'm sure the show will be trashed and mutilated by our friends at the Cult of Cornette and our buddy Jim Cornette. So message to that group, stop making wrestling unfun. You guys are pretty obnoxious, and I was thinking about, like, what about you guys is, like, bugging me, and I figured it out. So if you don't like a band, don't go to their concert, and definitely don't buy their shirt. So, like, I don't like Nickelback, right? So, like, I'm not going to buy a Nickelback shirt and then spread shit on it and then walk around proudly with my shit shirt. That's what you're doing. You guys in this group of, like, haters. Just get behind stuff you like. It's a loser mentality to do, you know, like, let's band together with a bunch of chronic masturbators and let this old legend tell us what we should or shouldn't like. Don't do that. Make the decisions for yourself, first of all. But second of all, think about who you're listening to. This guy was at, like, the top of his game at one point, right? A wrestling legend. And now he is selling toy figurines to a group of people on the internet that all are banding together around what they don't like, all while doing it with a cartoon 2D drawing and some dude secretary feeding him softballs in pre-scripted promos that he's definitely planning to cut for you guys, and you're buying it hook, line, and sinker. So think about this. Guy is conning you, and he's making money off you because he can't get into the industry he was once a legend in. So he's so mad, he is parlaying his anger into tricking y'all into, like, supporting his cause, which is not protecting wrestling. It's actually holding wrestling back, right? He says he's, like, super into protecting the industry, and I can't believe all this stuff. Oh, it's the first time in 20 years, for the love of God, that wrestling's fun again. There's, like, real competition to the WWE, and what's he doing? He's spitting on all these guys that are, like, trying to make it happen. It's a little bit different now than it was back then. He wants everyone to ride a horse and buggy carriage, and, like, sorry dude, like, Tesla exists now. People are wanting, like, electric vehicles, right? So think of that in the wrestling scope. Not everybody's gonna be fucking FTR, and if it was, I would turn the channel off, and so would a lot of people, because it's 2020. Also, think of the Wizard of Oz. Why does this guy not turn his camera on? It's just this cartoon image, right? Because, like, you turn the camera on and all of a sudden you realize it's two sad, miserable people, and the shtick's up. So yeah, keep throwing your cartoons up there, guys, and talking over the top with your pre-recorded bullet point or whatever scripts. And I mean, for the wrestling fan, I just ask you guys, like, why do you want to listen to somebody who says everything sucks? If someone ever says everything sucks, it's a strong argument that they suck, and they feel like they suck, and they're projecting that outward into the world. So get behind something cooler than the hate-filled group that is the Cult of Cornette. Join us at the Dynamite Download. We like wrestling. We think it's fun, and we have fun talking about it. So this is going to be a weekly thing. I think it needs to be counter-programmed. I know Jericho sent out a tweet that said basically just, like, shut up and maybe you'd have a job. But the reality of it is, I think he's right, and I think some people are, like, hesitant to say anything. So yeah, that's my take on it. My wife's back in my car. I'm gonna go enjoy my birthday, but there'll be more to this. This is a declaration of war. This has just begun. You're all a bunch of L7 weenies. Bye.
That was quite the promo. Wow.
Yeah, we all know that Zepp brings it, right? And
Yeah.
I think he had a lot that was pent up. You could tell.
Yes, for a while, to say the least. That was great.
but needed, right? I mean, like I said, even I need to kind of hear that reality check. We have to walk that line, right? Like we're not going to just be a fanboy over everything they do.
True.
But at the same time, I feel like Nate's point is a valid one, where negativity tends to feed negativity.
Yep.
And there seems to be like that, just they are just gravitating towards it, where now that's all that they expect, right? Like is Cornette going to ever actually be objective about the product? No. At this point, he knows what sells. He knows what his fan base is clamoring for, and it's him shitting on everything, right?
Right. So I didn't watch any recent Cornette stuff, but here we're given. I refuse to. I don't want to be influenced, or I don't want to have some sour negativity. It's all about the POP, if you know what I mean.
That's right.
So
that's right.
We do elite versus delete here, and it's for the greater good. It's not to we're critiquing the product, but we still love the product.
Absolutely.
And we all agree here at Dynamite Download that AEW is very superior, and it's amazing to see where it's at. And but whatever, we'll move on from there. That was the pipe bomb from Nate, and it's a great.
I think Nate says it really well. I think that in today's day and age, it's really easy to be a critic.
Right.
It's really easy to say, and even for me, there's sometimes when I've checked myself, right, where it's like, it's easy to sit behind a keyboard or sit like and kind of spit at opinions while people are actually out doing stuff. But it comes from a place of love. Like I'm a wrestling fan my whole life, and I genuinely love this product. And quite honestly, you and I have talked about this. Like AEW has sparked a fandom in me that I haven't felt since I was a little kid again. And so any critiques that I have, even when I'm disappointed, like tonight's show, I'm not going to lie. Even like maybe on a different night, OC versus Cody would have got an elite from me. But I was just so hyped for this show. Like I haven't been this hyped for a wrestling match.
I know, me too.
In a long time. And so, like I overinflated things and got a little disappointed. But that like disappointment is okay, right? Because it shows that you have an investment in the product. It shows you care. It shows you care. It shows that you want things to be great.
I agree.
Where I think Nate's point is that Cornette and his crew, the cult of Cornette, it feels like they're actively rooting for the company to fail. And
that's not good.
It's just putting negativity out in the world for the sake of being negative. I'm with Nate. I think that his words speak for themselves. But that said, again, like there's more to be said going forward in the show. That I think that there's some valid criticisms that the call to Cornette's going to throw out there. But one of the things that I want to get into before we get to the main event, which I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't very happy with, was I thought it was really nice to see Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara, that feud being rekindled. I thought that was really cool. Kind of came out of nowhere, right? What do you think on that, bud?
So when I first started seeing the promo package after Matt Hardy started, I was like, oh, is this a new feud? Is this going to be a new wrestler? Is this going to be a new signing? And I was like really excited because it was really well done. And I was like, oh, then it's Sammy. I get Matt is like really trying to help Sammy and put him over, which is fine and good. But I was really hoping it was a fresh face and a fresh feud where it could have been a fresh start for him, essentially. Don't just, repeat history. Like, where do you go from here? You're going to do a Hardy compound match, which could be possible because I saw some things on Twitter that could be a great option. And then I think that would be a great thing to do.
I'm going to pivot from you. We had opposite takes on the OC versus Cody match. I'm going to pivot for you. I think that this was great. I think that the way that the Sammy and the Hardy match ended with Hardy being unfortunately concussed.
Right.
And there was a lot of it was kind of a bummer as a fan, and I'm sure they as competitors were disappointed in the way that match ended, considering how much how intense that feud was. I think it's awesome. I think that it's great to show that that Sammy hasn't forgotten about it. I think it's great that they're going to continue to build off of that blood feud and really lean into it even more. Sammy's promo, where he cut Hardy off and kind of said, every single time that they clear you, I'm going to be the person who puts you back on the shelf. That was a great line.
I agree.
And I think that Hardy's role here in the company is to help develop young stars. I mean, obviously he's paired with Private Party, but I also think that there's a lot of buzz around a lot of young stars, and unfortunately, Sammy has kind of fallen by the wayside because of all the love that MJF has been getting.
Right.
Sammy in his own right is pretty damn good, and I think
agree.
I think that this was a good opportunity for him to kind of get out there, get on the mic, have a little bit of mic time, and I think that he and Hardy are going to put on some good shows going forward. So I really like where that's going. We'll go to the women's championship match next. I know that you usually are our biggest critic on Dynamite Download for women's matches. I'm going to let you start off. Or is this an elite or delete out of USPD?
Oh man, I hate to
don't let your fans down. Come on, you know you got it in you.
I mean, this match with no build, and I was happy that they put all the titles on the line. Sheeta looked it was entertaining for the most part, but just with the early commercial break and no build, to me, of course, it's a delete.
I'm not surprised. Way to come through for your fans. They all count on you to shit all over the women's division in AEW. So for me, I have to go with the delete as well. I was going into the match kind of hoping for the best. Again, I'm somebody who really likes watching how styles play off of each other in wrestling. And I thought going into it, Sheeta and Swole, both known for being strikers. Swole being, obviously one of the stronger women in the division. I thought that could have really played well off of each other, but it really it was just one of those matches that never really got off the ground for me. Right. They're like you said,
slow.
The commercial breaks, it just was kind of slow. I don't know if it was that they weren't comfortable working together, but I expected. I mean, again, given what we've seen out of Swole, I think it's normal for us to kind of recognize, okay, we need to temper expectations. She's still a work in progress. Not to say that she's not going to continue to get better, but I think right now Swole is more sizzled than steak. She's really great when it comes to her character work, her in-ring, her as far as her introduction and the whole persona of Big Swole. That is entertaining. Mm-hmm. Her matches just don't quite deliver to that level yet. And Sheeta is the opposite, right? Sheeta is technically very sound in the ring, a good competitor, but just doesn't have a lot of that pizzazz that makes you interested in her character at all.
True.
And I think that unfortunately, instead of seeing those two things complement each other and play off of each other and make things better, I think unfortunately it kind of was a dud overall. I just was not engaged as a fan. I didn't at any point really think that Swole was going to win this match. Going in, I thought maybe there could have been an upset, but it became very evident very early on that just the pacing of the match, did not have upset written all over it. It was just kind of a dud. So delete from us on that one.
Oh gosh.
So before we get started into the highlight of it, you had mentioned the Scorpio Sean Spears promo. Let's just really touch on that very quickly, because this card was filled with so many promos throughout the night. Where do you see that going? I guess
it's hard. I mean, I think that would be great. I think Scorpio and Spears feud would be great for TV. So I really hope they do let's say build a match to Full Gear. I'd be happy for that to get Spears back on TV and Scorpio back on TV. The promo itself was kind of the video package was good, but Spears kind of zooming in from his bathroom wall was kind of lame and half-assed in my way. So I would be interested and excited for a match of Full Gear for them, not on a pre-show on the card.
Yeah, I think for those of us who are following the wrestlers on social media and things like that, there are very few people in AEW who are putting in the work that Sean Spears is putting in.
I agree.
That dude is a beast.
Yeah.
And he's putting in the work in the gym, dude. Like, he is a physical freak, and he is grinding it out. Like, you can tell he's hungry. I don't know how he fell out of favor, to be honest with you. He came in so hot in AEW as the chairman.
I know.
I don't know what happened and how he fell through the cracks. And I know that Tony Khan, there's a lot of conversation how high Tony Khan is on Scorpio Sky and how he believes that Scorpio can be a single star himself.
Right.
I like that this kind of featured two guys that have not necessarily gotten a lot of TV time recently. And if it does give those guys a little bit of TV time, I'm all for it. I'm all for getting exposed to some new talent and giving guys like that a chance. I know Dynamite's only a couple hours a week, but I think both guys are pros. They've been at it for a long time, and I think it'd be good to see those guys go at it in the ring and see what they can deliver. I think we might be pleasantly surprised. That said, it's time for the main event.
Yes.
The Murder Hawk versus Mox. SPD. Tell me, going into the match, who were you rooting for? Did you have a vested interest at all? Were you pulling for Moxley or Archer at all?
I've been high on Archer since the TNT Championship tournament, and I really like him. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I was rooting for him. As we were discussing on our Twitter, AEW Dynamite DL, the Murder Hawk was, liking and talking to us and, posting, and his whole social countdown every day of, the title match. It just seemed inevitable, like writing in the stars in the sand, that he was going to be the next champ. And I was rooting for him. I was ready for a fresh title run, even though Moxley has been carrying the company for months and almost a year. But I was ready. And with the build and the segments throughout the show was great, and it was a brutal match. The ending to me was a little soft and stale. And what really kind of bothered me the most of the ending was how it just kind of, like, in a way, abruptly ended, and then Archer just, like, walks off.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, I'm done, bye. It's not like, yes, he took that chair shot and all that, like, kind of stare down, but it just is like he walked off with no contestant, didn't really care, and just, like, left. So that was interesting, that ending. So I was a little bummed. I was hoping for a title change this episode, especially with all of them on the line. And I thought this one would have been it.
Yeah, I agree in the general sense of the overall show, Sean. I think that a title change would have been nice. I mean, obviously last week Cody winning, that was a big change in the overall the landscape of AEW. But when you advertise 4 title matches, I think as a fan you almost are anticipating at least one to change hands.
Right.
And being invested in social media and following social media, Archer and Mox are just night and day different in how they handle their social media.
Right.
Archer is so engaged on social media. He's engaged with the fans. And Moxley is, like, basically non-existent. So I think for those of us who feel like we want to be a part of AEW, we're AEW Nation, I think even though Moxley is the babyface, I think there was a groundswell of support for the Murder Hawk monster in this one, and there were a lot of people who were kind of clamoring for him to get his just due and to get a title.
Right.
It's disappointing also in the grand scheme of things for Archer to win the Battle Royal and then come up short, to be locked up in quarantine, right? To have all that time to train, not be distracted, to be focused on your title match, where Moxley was basically getting, beat down every week, fighting Eddie Kingston, fighting the Butcher, and for Moxley to prevail again
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't know, man. To me, like you just, if you're Lance Archer, you have two big title chances, and you get put down on both of them.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to build up his credibility, especially at this stage of his career. It's disappointing to me in that regard. And as you saw in last week's write up, the list of names that Moxley has put down while in AEW is just it's everybody. It's
Yeah.
basically everybody you can name outside of Cody who's not allowed to have a title shot, right? I mean, it's just you could go Kenny Omega, Pac, MJF, Kingston, Lance Archer, Brody Lee.
Yeah.
There's not really anybody in the main event scene other than potentially Hangman Page who hasn't been defeated by Mox, and so
It's impressive.
they've definitely solidified that Moxley is the man in AEW.
Right.
He I will say, obviously, PWI has rated him as the best wrestler in the world, and he has a lot of fans, and he's done nothing but be a pro at AEW.
Right.
But to me, there's something, I don't know, as a fan, Moxley's title reign, even with all those definitive wins, there's not maybe it's his in-ring style. I think there's not really a definitive win for him where I've been really blown away by what he's done.
Yeah, and I think the chokehold finish is really weak on him. Use the paradigm shift. The MJF Mox match was probably the best he's had in many months on that pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Back to Archer real quick. Like I dig his new look. He almost looks like Liv Schreiber with the way his like beard is like now he cut off that, his little rat tail on his chin, which worked. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking him. I like his look. He went to the blonde versus the red. He's got new ring gear. He had new music. So he had all this going for him where it was like writing in the sand, like put the title on him. It's fresh, everything.
I know.
What I don't know who knocks off Mox. I mean, I'm happy with the Eddie Kingston and Mox feud continuing, and where Eddie Kingston kind of stood tall. I can't see Eddie Kingston winning or holding the title. It is fun to watch him.
He's great on the mic, man.
For
He's
sure, it's
great on the stick.
So I'm all for another Eddie Kingston Moxley match, but then like who's going to dethrone?
I think you called it.
Yeah, whoever wins that tournament.
Yeah, I think you called it in last week's episode where you kind of were tempering my expectations because again, I'm a fan of Archer. I've been rooting for him. Some of it is because of just the stage of his career that he's in, the journey that he's had to get to where he is. I was hoping that he would get an opportunity.
Right.
But also some of it is just because like I don't know. Maybe I'm not all in on the Moxley thing, man. I don't know why. There's just something that's holding me back from being a diehard Mox fan, even back in his previous run in the prior companies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. I felt like I feel like the winner of that tournament, that will be a crowning moment for that person. And I think that if it's Kenny Omega or if it's Hangman Page, I think that either one would be a great matchup against.
I agree. I think that should be the new champion for sure. If they're going to build this tournament for that, they need to take the belt.
Yeah, it has to be somebody with star power and credibility and really an ability to run with it for a while because Moxley's reign has been so dominant for so long that you really need to be able to have somebody who's believable from a fan's perspective to take it from here. What do you say, man? Elite or delete on this one?
Because I enjoyed the hardcore part of it, and there was some great, Archer really impressed me with some of the moves, that flip off the turnbuckle and the violence. I was like, dang, man, he needs to be built. Like, this is why I fell in love with him when he, during that TN title, but I'm giving it elite.
I like it.
What about you?
Removing my I will say I was very disappointed in the ending of the match. I thought that the roll up by Moxley was cheap, and
Yeah.
I thought even after that post match stuff was not particularly well done. Even with all that said, I feel like I have to give it a begrudgingly. I have to give it an elite. I'm very torn on it. I might end up flip flopping elites and deletes between the TNT match and this one.
Right.
But for right now, I'm going to put it as an elite, simply because, okay, if I'm removing my disappointment in Archer, in how this impacts Lance Archer's career,
right.
And I look at it strictly from AEW's perspective, they are all in on Moxley, and for us to say, like, okay, like we had him go over MJF, who I think a lot of people were calling for him to win the title.
Yeah.
This has happened multiple times, right? I mean, this is nothing new. Brody Lee, Brian Cage, MJF, Lance Archer, right? There are a lot of guys who AEW could have pivoted to and said, this is going to be the guy. John Moxley is very clearly the guy in AEW. Yeah. So I say from that standpoint, they've solidified him as the man. His legacy in AEW is without question going to be rock solid. It's going to be carved out of stone. He's the guy, right? So
I agree.
I gotta give the credit in that regard. Lance Archer and Moxley put on a hell of a match. They beat the hell out of each other. They really did. So
the build was great.
Yeah, and the build to it was awesome. I can't lie. So I'll begrudgingly give it an elite. So that said, top performer of the night, SPD. Where are you at, bud?
Look at this. This is who I pick right here, Miro.
Wow.
Even though, so your guy, Miro, this is why. Because even though he had a very non-important, no title match, nothing like that, seeing him develop into this angry, relentless, brutal man he is, made me just almost like stand up and cheer for him, because I was just like, yes, this is exactly what they need. This is what he needs to be. He doesn't need to have this long match with Sonny Kiss and Janela. Nothing wrong with them. Love them. But, he didn't just squash them as he should. He should be squashing guys left and right for the next couple of weeks and then eventually go on a singles run, in my opinion. So the way he performed, both beating up the best friends and then, the squash match as expected, and the promo, game over. So that stood out the most to me.
Love your pick. Love your pick.
Thank you.
I think that's a well done as far as like definitely bringing a new intensity to the character that was much needed. Although you wouldn't guess from my reaction to the actual match itself, I will say that I was most impressed by Orange Cassidy tonight. I think that just because although there's never been a question of how over Orange Cassidy has been, to me, he's never really had a match that showcased his ability as an in-ring performer beyond a lot of, mixing in comic relief and then hitting some spots here and there. This match, Cody pushed him to build consistent and believable offense. I also think that they did a nice job of establishing him as a true babyface. When he had the opportunity to let Silver hit Cody with the belt or to hit Cody with the belt himself, he didn't do it. So they've put a lot of work into making sure Orange Cassidy is built as a believable star and a babyface in this company. When it comes to pure babyface, there's not a lot of people in wrestling who can pull it off and be popular in today's day and age. It usually takes some sort of edge to be popular amongst wrestling fans. And I think Orange Cassidy is the rare thing where he's just a good guy, a good, funny story, and an easy guy to root for. So I was impressed with the performance. So that said, There's a lot to look forward to the next week. Obviously, it's not as stacked of a card as it was going into this week, but there are some things that will keep us hooked in. Yeah. Obviously, from my perspective, what they announced with the 8-man tag or the 8-man number one contender tournament, that's really where this is going to really start to play out next week.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how that goes. What jumps out to you as far as looking at the overall card for next week, Sean?
I think as we're wrapping things up here on Dynamite Download, there was so much going on. I kept taking notes and writing things, like going pages and pages. There was like so much to keep track of, all the different promos and all the things that they're pitching in 2 weeks and next week or for Full Gear now. So it was just a lot going on, which is great, what I wanted to see. So now you're going to have 4 amazing matches. Did they announce all 4 first round next week?
I didn't hear that all 4 are going to be on next week. I will say that I
thought there was, because the finals were going to be, it said something on the bottom of something on the 7th, but either way, if they do all 4 next week, finals are on November 7th. So that means they do have to start next week.
Wow. Yeah.
So that will be awesome. And the 4-way tag match, obviously Young Bucks have got to take the win on that one. It's just the way they've been building for that. So FTR, Young Bucks. And then I would be happy if the Young Bucks finally get gold in AEW after that.
Yeah, I think that for me, the tag title tournament, the tag title number one contender match between those 4 teams is going to be really great. I think that John Silver and Alex Reynolds are obviously hilarious together.
Oh, gosh.
They'll add some comedy to that match, and it'll also give them an ability to showcase what they can do in the ring. I think that'll be great. Right. But on top of that, I do think that it's great. It'll be a great kickstart to the next level of the FTR and Young Bucks feud.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that the most out of. I love AEW's tag division. I think that's going to be awesome. But having next week's show really start a new chapter for AEW, right? We saw Lance Archer. Sure. Lance Archer was our number one contender going into for the last several weeks. And so he's now been knocked down from that position and is going to be replaced with the winner of the tournament. There's a lot of new things being started in next week's show. So as a fan, definitely tune in next week to see where things are going to go leading into Full Gear. Make sure that you follow us on the AEW Dynamite DL on Twitter and at Dynamite Download on Instagram. And please click subscribe now. We love getting your feedback. We love seeing the views. We love interacting with you guys because at the end of the day, we're fans too. And we want to keep this going, guys. So thanks for the follow. Thanks for interacting, guys. And until next time, Dynamite Download out.